Have you ever stopped to question the voice in your head, the one that never seems to shut up, constantly analyzing, judging, and replaying every moment of your life? What if I told you that voice isn't actually you? That the thoughts running through your mind, the ones shaping your decisions, fueling your emotions, and defining your identity, are not truly your own? It sounds impossible, right? Because from the moment we wake up, we believe we are the thinker of our thoughts. But here's the truth. You're not thinking, you're listening. Every idea, every doubt, every random memory that surfaces isn't something you deliberately create. You're simply hearing them, as if your mind were a radio station playing a never-ending broadcast. And the most shocking part, that voice doesn't always tell you the truth. It twists reality, creates fear where none exists, and keeps you trapped in an endless cycle of overthinking. It convinces you that you are your failures, your insecurities, your past mistakes. It whispers, "You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. What will they think of you?" And you listen, believing every word. But what if you didn't have to? What if you could step back and see that voice for what it really is, a conditioned stream of thoughts shaped by experiences, fears, and the expectations of others? And what if I told you that by understanding this simple truth, you could break free from its control, that you could finally quiet the noise, take back your power, and experience life in a completely different way? Stick with me, because once you realize what's really happening inside your mind, you'll never see yourself the same way again. From the moment you wake up, thoughts flood your mind. What should I wear today? Did I send that email? Why did I say that yesterday? They come at you relentlessly, one after another, as if you're the one generating them. But pause for a moment. Are you really the one creating these thoughts, or are you simply witnessing them? Most people go through life, never questioning the source of their own thinking. They assume that because a thought appears in their mind, it must belong to them. But if that were true, wouldn't you always think positively? Wouldn't you choose thoughts that empower you, inspire you, and bring you peace? Yet, more often than not, your mind fixates on doubt, worry, and self-criticism. If you were truly in control, why would you ever allow yourself to be consumed by fear or regret? Think about the last time a random, unexpected thought popped into your head. Maybe it was a bizarre memory from childhood or a completely irrational fear that made no sense. Did you consciously choose to think that, or did it just arise on its own? The truth is, thoughts don't ask for permission before entering your mind. They appear, they linger, and sometimes they take hold of you without your consent. The mind acts like a radio station, playing a constant stream of commentary, and instead of questioning the broadcast, most people simply accept it as truth. But here's where it gets dangerous. Your brain doesn't just generate neutral thoughts. It tells stories, it weaves narratives that shape your identity, often in ways that limit you. It tells you that you're not smart enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough. It replays old mistakes, making you relive failures that should have been left in the past. And because these thoughts appear inside your head, you assume they must be real. But they aren't. They're just echoes of conditioning, shaped by past experiences, fears, and external influences. So if these thoughts aren't really yours, if you're not the one actively choosing them, then who are you beyond them? That's where the real shift begins, when you stop identifying with the voice in your head and start questioning the illusion of ownership. Because once you see that you are not your thoughts, you can finally take back control. If the voice in your head isn't truly you, then where do your thoughts actually come from? This question changes everything, because once you understand the source of your thoughts, you'll realize just how little control you have over them, and why that's a good thing. Your brain is like a massive supercomputer, running millions of calculations behind the scenes, absorbing information, filtering experiences, and forming connections without you even realizing it. It's processing everything you see, hear, and feel, constantly drawing from past memories, subconscious fears, and societal conditioning. But here's the catch. Most of this happens automatically, without your conscious input. Think of your subconscious mind as an operating system. It takes every past experience, every belief you've absorbed, every piece of data you've ever encountered, and uses that information to generate the thoughts you hear. But here's where it gets tricky. Your subconscious isn't designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you safe. Its primary function is survival, which means it filters everything through the lens of past pain, failure, and potential threats. That's why so many of your thoughts focus on the negative. If you've ever had a bad experience with public speaking, your subconscious remembers that moment of embarrassment or fear. So the next time you even think about speaking in front of people, it generates thoughts like, what if I mess up again? What if they judge me? Not because these things will actually happen, but because your brain is trying to prevent you from reliving that discomfort. But it gets even deeper. Many of the thoughts you hear aren't even yours to begin with. They've been programmed into you by society, culture, family, and past experiences. Think about the beliefs you hold about success, relationships, or even your own worth. How many of them did you consciously choose? And how many were shaped by the expectations of others? From a young age, you were told what's acceptable, what's possible, what's realistic. Over time, those external voices became internalized, blending into your subconscious until they felt like your own thoughts. But are they? If you grew up in an environment where failure was punished, your mind will generate thoughts that make you fear taking risks. If you were told as a child that you weren't good enough, your subconscious will continue feeding you that story well into adulthood, and unless you recognize this, you'll keep mistaking these external influences as your own inner truth. The voice in your head is like a puppet, and your subconscious is pulling the strings. But here's the good news. Once you become aware of this, you can start cutting those strings. You can break free from old programming, rewrite the script, and finally take control of your own mind. Because when you understand that thoughts are not facts, but merely conditioned patterns, you gain the power to decide which ones to believe and which ones to let go. If the voice in our head often causes stress, doubt, and negativity, why do we keep listening to it? Why do we let it control our emotions, dictate our decisions, and shape the way we see ourselves? The answer is simple, yet powerful. We are addicted to it. The mind is designed for pattern recognition, and one of the most deeply ingrained patterns we follow is the identity cycle. The voice in your head isn't just a series of random thoughts. It's the narrator of your life, constantly, reinforcing the story you believe about yourself. Even when that story is painful, it feels familiar. And familiarity, no matter how negative, gives a sense of security. If the voice in your head repeatedly tells you you're not good enough, you begin to believe it. Not because it's true, but because it has been repeated so many times that it becomes part of your internal identity. This is why we cling to our negative thoughts, even when they hurt us. The voice doesn't just offer observations, it weaves narratives. It tells you why you failed, why people don't like you, why you'll never succeed. These stories feel real because they are tied to emotion, and the stronger the emotion, the more persuasive the thought becomes. This is why criticism from our inner voice feels more powerful than logic. It's why we replay painful conversations from years ago, but struggle to remember a compliment from last week. The voice in your head thrives on emotional engagement, and every time you react to it, you reinforce its power over you. But the addiction goes deeper than just familiarity. It's also about control. We believe that by constantly thinking, analyzing, and predicting, we can somehow prevent bad things from happening. The mind tricks us into believing that if we obsess over our mistakes, we can avoid repeating them. that if we anticipate every worst-case scenario, we can protect ourselves from disappointment. But in reality, this constant overthinking does nothing but trap us in an endless loop of stress and anxiety. The more you engage with the voice, the stronger it becomes. The more you argue with it, the louder it gets. It's like feeding a stray. It keeps coming back, but here's the secret: you don't have to listen. The voice is loud because it craves your attention, but attention is a choice. Imagine sitting by a busy road. Cars are passing by, but you don't have to chase them. You can just watch. This simple act of observing the voice instead of engaging with it is the first step toward breaking free. Because once you realize that the voice is not you, you gain the power to stop identifying with it, and that changes everything. One of the biggest tricks your mind plays on you is making you believe that you are in control of your thoughts. These are my thoughts, you tell yourself, so they must represent who I am. But if that were true, why would you ever choose to think negatively? Why would you allow yourself to spiral into fear, self-doubt, or regret? If you were truly in control, wouldn't you always choose clarity, confidence, and peace of mind? The very fact that your thoughts often contradict what you want proves that they aren't fully yours to control. The illusion of control exists because the voice in your head masquerades as you. It doesn't speak in a detached third-person manner. It uses first-person statements like I am, I should, I need. It attaches itself to your identity, making you believe that every passing thought defines who you are. When you think, I'm not good enough, it doesn't feel like just a random idea. It feels like a fundamental truth about your existence. This is why thoughts can be so persuasive. They don't just appear in your mind. They come dressed as facts, woven into the fabric of your self-perception. Your brain does this as a survival mechanism. If you believe your inner voice is an extension of yourself, you're more likely to take its warnings seriously. If it says, "Don't take that risk," you obey because you assume it's protecting you from failure. If it whispers, "You're not worthy," you believe it because you assume it's revealing some hidden truth about your identity. But here's the reality. The voice in your head is not you. It is simply a function of your brain. Just like your heartbeat or digestion, thoughts happen automatically. They arise based on past experiences, fears, and conditioning. But you don't have to let them define you. Imagine watching clouds in the sky. They shift, form, and dissolve. On their own, you don't control them. Your thoughts function the same way, but most people don't realize this. Instead of watching their thoughts come and go, they attach to them, chase them, and fight them, believing that by controlling their thoughts, they can control their reality. But this only strengthens the illusion. The moment you recognize that you are not the thinker, you are the observer of thinking, everything changes. You don't have to accept every thought as truth. You don't have to engage with every doubt or fear. You can simply watch them come and go like waves on the shore. And once you see this illusion for what it is, you reclaim your power. You no longer live inside your thoughts, you rise above them. Every time you engage with the voice in your head, you reinforce its power over you. The cost of listening to this inner dialogue isn't just stress or self-doubt. It's the slow erosion of your potential. Imagine you have an idea for a new project, something exciting, something that could change your life. But before you can even take the first step, the voice speaks up. What if you fail? What will people think? You're not good enough for this. And just like that, before you've even tried, you hesitate, you second-guess yourself, and in the end, you do nothing. Not because you weren't capable, but because you believed a thought that wasn't even real. This is the invisible prison most people live in, one where their greatest limitations exist not in the real world, but in their own minds. The voice convinces you that playing small is safer, that staying in your comfort zone is better than risking failure. And the worst part? It feels rational. The mind uses fear as logic, making every doubt seem like a responsible decision rather than what it really is, an invisible chain keeping you from growth. But the cost isn't just in missed opportunities. It's in the damage done to your self-trust. Every time you listen to the voice, instead of your instincts, you reinforce the idea that you are incapable. Over time, this creates a cycle of hesitation where you stop trusting yourself to make decisions, take action, or step into discomfort. You start living passively, waiting for some external sign to give you permission to move forward. But that permission never comes, because the voice in your head will never be satisfied. It will always find a new doubt, a new fear, a new excuse. And here's where it gets even more dangerous. The more you engage with the voice, the more power it gains. It's like feeding a fire. Each time you entertain a negative thought, each time you react with fear, you reinforce the belief that the voice is telling the truth. And so the cycle continues, until one day you look back and realize that the only thing holding you back all along was yourself. But here's the good news. You don't have to silence the voice to break free. You just have to stop believing it. The next time it whispers, "You can't do this," pause. Instead of reacting with fear, respond with curiosity. Is this true? Is this thought even helpful? Most of the time, the answer will be no. And the moment you stop giving the voice authority over your life, you reclaim your power. Because the truth is, you were never trapped. The door was always open. You just have to step through it. The moment you become aware of the voice in your head, something incredible happens. It starts to lose its grip on you. Imagine being trapped in a dark room, stumbling around, trying to make sense of your surroundings. Now imagine flipping on a light. Suddenly, the shadows that once seemed terrifying are revealed for what they are, just illusions. This is what awareness does to the thoughts in your mind. It doesn't silence them, it simply allows you to see them for what they really are: fleeting, conditioned patterns, not absolute truths. Most people live their entire lives without this awareness. They don't question their thoughts, they believe them. They assume that because a thought appears in their mind, it must be real, it must be meaningful, it must be them. But when you step into awareness, you realize something shocking. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them. This shift is subtle yet powerful. Instead of reacting to every thought that arises, you start watching them, the way you might watch traffic passing on a busy road. The cars are there, moving in different directions, but you don't have to chase them. You don't have to get in one and let it take you somewhere you don't want to go. You can simply watch. The same applies to your thoughts. Instead of getting lost in them, instead of reacting with fear, stress, or over-analysis, you can just observe. Here's an example. Let's say you make a mistake at work, and your mind immediately begins its attack. "I can't believe I did that. I'm so stupid. What if my boss thinks I'm incompetent?" In the past, you might have followed that thought down a spiral of anxiety, replaying it over and over, feeling smaller and more ashamed with each repetition. But with awareness, you take a different approach. You step back and notice the thought instead of becoming it. There's that critical voice again. Interesting. Just that small act of noticing creates distance. And in that distance, you find freedom. This doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing thoughts. In fact, the more you fight them, the louder they become. If I tell you don't think about a pink elephant, what happens? You immediately picture one. The same thing happens with your thoughts. When you resist them, they persist. But when you observe them without judgment, they begin to lose their power over you. Awareness is about shifting from identification to observation. When you identify with your thoughts, you feel controlled by them. When you observe them, you recognize that they are separate from you. And this shift changes everything. Over time, you'll start to notice patterns. You'll see that your mind is more negative when you're tired, more anxious when you're stressed, more fearful when you step outside your comfort zone. And once you recognize these patterns, you can begin to disengage from them. You no longer get caught in the same mental loops. You no longer believe every thought that crosses your mind. Instead, you become the witness, the observer, the one who watches without attachment. And in that awareness, you find something deeper than thought. You find clarity, you find peace, you find yourself. When you stop identifying with the voice in your head, something remarkable happens. You start to discover who you really are. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. Beneath the endless chatter, the doubts, the fears, and the self-judgment, there is something deeper, something untouched by all the noise. Your true self. Your true self isn't the critical voice that tells you you're not enough. It's not the fearful voice that obsesses over the future, nor the regretful voice that clings to the past. Your true self is the quiet presence that observes all of it. It is the awareness that watches without judgment, the stillness beneath the chaos of thought. And once you recognize this, a profound shift begins. For most of your life, you've been trapped in the illusion that you are your thoughts. That if your mind says, "I'm not worthy," it must be true. That if fear arises, it means danger is near. But what if you could step back? What if, instead of being consumed by every thought, you could simply watch it come and go, like a passing cloud in the sky? This shift isn't about silencing the voice in your head. It's about changing your relationship with it. The voice will always be there. It will still chatter, still analyze, still try to pull you into its stories. But it will no longer control you. Instead of being its prisoner, you become its observer. And that changes everything, because when you stop identifying with the voice, you no longer live at the mercy of old fears, outdated beliefs, and conditioned thought patterns. You stop carrying the weight of every passing doubt. You stop being dragged through the same cycles of self-sabotage. Instead, you live from a place of clarity, freedom, and presence. This is the moment you reclaim your power, the moment you realize you are not the stories your mind tells you. You are not your fears, your failures, or your past. You are the awareness behind it all. And from this place of stillness, of pure presence, you can finally begin to live, not as a prisoner of your mind, but as the limitless being you were always meant to be. Understanding the voice in your head is one thing, but breaking free from its grip is another. The mind has spent years, maybe even decades, convincing you that its voice is your voice, that its fears are your fears, and that its doubts are your reality. But the moment you recognize that you are not your thoughts, you regain control. The key now is learning how to step back, observe the voice, and stop allowing it to dictate your life. Here are 5 powerful steps to help you break free. Practice mindfulness. The first step to disempowering the voice is awareness. Mindfulness is the simple act of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. Set aside a few minutes each day to sit in silence, focusing only on your breath. When thoughts arise, don't fight them, just notice them. There's that familiar worry again. The more you practice this, the more distance you create between yourself and the voice. You begin to see that thoughts are just passing clouds, not absolute truths. Question your thoughts. Not every thought deserves your belief. When a negative or self-critical thought arises, pause and ask, is this true? Is this helpful? Most of the time, the answer will be no. Your mind is like an overprotective guardian, always trying to predict danger, even when none exists. By questioning its assumptions, you weaken its hold on you. Thoughts lose their power when you stop blindly accepting them. Shift your focus to the present. The voice in your head thrives in the past and the future. It replays past mistakes and worries about things that haven't even happened yet. But when you shift your attention to the present moment, the voice loses its grip. Try this. Engage your senses. Notice the colors around you, the feeling of your breath, the sounds in the background. The more anchored you are in the now, the less influence the voice has over you. So, write it down. Sometimes, the best way to quiet the voice is to take it out of your head and put it on paper. When you write down your thoughts, you begin to see them objectively, rather than feeling consumed by them. Journaling can help you separate reality from mental noise. You'll notice patterns in the way your mind speaks to you, and once you see those patterns, they become easier to break. Seek support and surround yourself with growth. Breaking free from negative thought patterns doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Therapy, meditation groups, self-development books, and supportive communities can all help reinforce your awareness. The mind is powerful, but it's also malleable. You can rewire your thinking by surrounding yourself with people, ideas, and experiences that elevate you instead of pulling you down. The goal is not to silence the voice in your head completely. That's impossible. The goal is to change your relationship with it. Over time, as you practice awareness, questioning, and detachment, you'll notice something incredible. The voice loses its power. It no longer dictates your choices, controls your emotions, or limits your potential. Instead, it becomes what it was always meant to be, just background noise while you take center stage in your own life. One of the greatest realizations you can have in life is this: you are not your thoughts. For most people, this idea seems impossible to grasp. After all, your thoughts feel so personal, so intertwined with your emotions and identity. But the truth is, thoughts are simply fleeting patterns of energy, automatic processes created by the brain. They arise, exist for a moment, and then disappear. Just like clouds drifting through the sky, they are temporary. They are not you. Imagine standing by a river, watching the water flow. Each thought is like a leaf floating downstream. Most people spend their lives jumping into the river, grabbing onto every single leaf, clinging to every passing thought as if it defines them. But what happens when you step back? When you simply observe the river instead of drowning in it, you realize that you don't have to chase every thought. You don't have to believe every doubt, every fear, every critical voice. This shift in perspective is liberating. The voice in your head will still speak, but you will no longer be controlled by it. Instead of reacting, you will watch. Instead of believing, you will question. And with every moment of awareness, you will reclaim a piece of yourself that was lost in the noise. This is the beginning of true freedom. No longer trapped in the endless cycle of overthinking, self-doubt, and fear, you step into a life of clarity, peace, and presence. A life where your mind is no longer your master, but simply a tool, a servant to your highest self. And that's the ultimate realization. Your thoughts don't define you. You define you.